So, pine pollen has been getting quite a lot of attention over recent years, primarily for two reasons. Really for its ability to increase androgenic hormones, and also for its role as a really, really powerful superfood. But it really possesses so many incredible healing and nourishing actions to it that are really seldom talked about by anyone in the alternative or holistic health movement. And it really is a herb that pretty much does it all. I mean, I'll probably examine some of the other specific powers that pine pollen has in future videos. But in this video, I just wanted to have a look at how pine pollen is actually very, very effective at increasing levels of dopamine in the body. So dopamine is obviously a neurotransmitter, and it is part of the brain's reward mechanism. So it really helps us to feel good about ourselves. It helps us feel peaceful, helps us have happy feelings. And it also seriously improves our ability to concentrate and focus on things and to pay attention to things, which really helps us to learn things at a higher level. Now, dopamine also regulates nervous system function, and it really reduces the effects of many different types of stress. So increasing dopamine is really a very, very good strategy for alleviating depression and anxiety and other stress-related experiences that people may be having. And it obviously does play a very key role in many neurological illnesses like Parkinson's disease and the treatment of Parkinson's disease. And actually, even when people get really nervous or they get really stressed out and they begin to kind of physically shake like this and they have these nervous muscular tremors, this is a real sign of low dopamine, and it's actually kind of like a mini momentary experience of Parkinson's. So to put it simply, we need to consume nutrients in order to create L-Dopa, which is a dopamine precursor, and then L-Dopa needs to be converted into dopamine. So for the first stage of that in creating L-Dopa in the body requires the amino acids phenylalanine and tyrosine, and the enzyme that converts them into L-Dopa requires the presence of iron. Now, there's very significant amounts of all three of those nutrients in pine pollen. Now then there's the second enzymatic conversion that is going to turn L-Dopa into dopamine. Now this requires pyridoxine, which again is present in really good amounts in pine pollen. Now there's a few co-enzymes that are really essential for this whole conversion process to actually take place effectively, and they really, they need to be present in order to support this whole process. Now, these coenzymes do require further additional nutrients. Vitamin B9 or folic acid is one of them. Pyridoxine again for the coenzymes, and nicotinamide as well. Now, all of these nutrients, absolutely every single one of them that I just mentioned, is present in pine pollen in decent to quite high amounts. Plus, there's masses of antioxidants in pine pollen. There's many different nutritional antioxidants and superoxide dismutase, and it actually helps us to produce more of our own endogenous antioxidants within the body. And this is really important because in cases of very low dopamine, there can be a lot of cell damage and cell deterioration that takes place, and this is very much an extreme case in instances of things like Parkinson's disease. So having a lot of antioxidants there to really protect the integrity of the cells is very, very important, and pine pollen is just loaded with antioxidants. So deficiencies in any of the nutrients that I just mentioned, especially in tyrosine and phenylalanine, can really result in or contribute towards dopamine levels dropping too low. But aside from the extreme example of Parkinson's disease, there are many, many other reasons why dopamine may be too low, like really high stress levels or lack of sleep or too much sleep, an underactive thyroid or adrenal fatigue, or kind of immune irregularities where maybe we're getting colds a lot, maybe we've got the flu, just a recurring flu, or just, you know, in general, the kind of either underactive or overactive immune function. And also overexposure to some heavy metals can really exacerbate dopamine deficiency. And things like alcoholism and drug use, especially the kind of amphetamine drug use, these kind of lifestyle factors can really factor in very heavily into dopamine deficiency. So some common symptoms that are related to low dopamine levels are if you're constantly feeling bored or uninspired or just really unmotivated, and you've got no enthusiasm for anything, you know, if you're finding it really quite difficult to stay present and stay focused on things, even when they're actually really interesting and you do really enjoy them, but you're just struggling to maintain any kind of mental continuity with it. Struggling to learn things and struggling to remember things that you have learned. Constantly craving stimulants and things that are going to give you a lift and, you know, uppers really. And a tendency towards becoming dependent or addicted to these kind of stimulants. People that have quite an introverted personality as well, and maybe have recurring and persistent experiences of, you know, social anxiety of some sort. Low sex drive, low libido, that's actually very closely tied into low dopamine levels. Sometimes issues with weight gain and weight management can be connected with low dopamine. And you got kind of people that are on both or either end of the mental spectrum, as in on one end you could have quite a low mental function in the sense of, you know, quite chronic depression, but then on the other end of the spectrum you could have a very hyperactive mind. So people with bipolar disorder or manic depression, or people that have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, all of these things most of the time do have a low levels of dopamine, definitely as a recurring theme that runs through all of these. So if dopamine deficiency really is an issue, then incorporating herbs like pine pollen into your daily life, you know, over the long term, can have really significant effects in improving the situation and really, you know, allowing you to produce more dopamine consistently over time. Now, something else that would be a good idea to include into that would be mucuna. Mucuna is very, very rich in L-Dopa, so it's a really good dopamine precursor all by itself. But, you know, pine pollen is definitely going to act as a very amazing foundational layer for you to be producing more dopamine consistently over the long term. Now, using natural MAO inhibitors for cases of very, very low dopamine is really an effective strategy as well. Herbs like passion flower, turmeric as well, and nutmeg, and even on the extreme end of the scale, ayahuasca. All of these herbs interfere with and block the activity of the enzyme monoamine oxidase, or MAO, hence MAO inhibitor. You know, monoamine oxidase's job is really to metabolize dopamine and kind of lower the levels of active dopamine that are in circulation. So herbal MAO inhibitors like the ones I just mentioned, used in conjunction with dopamine increasing herbs and foods like pine pollen, can really help to keep dopamine levels much higher for a lot longer and really offer genuine support for many of the conditions and, you know, symptoms that I mentioned a moment ago. So yeah, when we buy pine pollen, generally speaking, we're going to be getting it in either powdered form or tinctured form. I've done a couple of videos on pine pollen already. I'll link to those in the description box. One of them was a more general overview of the health benefits of pine pollen. The other one I made like a week or so ago, that was some of the ways I use pine pollen, some of the ways I take it, some of the ways I, you know, make it into recipes and cook with it and do things like that. But But yeah, you're either going to get it as a powder or as a tincture. Now, in my experience, because I've been using pine pollen in both of those forms near enough every day for the last year, and in my experience, I would definitely say that the tincture does increase levels of dopamine. I mean, I haven't measured this, and I don't have any kind of paperwork to prove it, but just through my experience, I would say that using the tincture does elevate levels of dopamine much more quickly and in a more powerful way, simply because it's bypassing the whole digestive system and it's absorbing into the bloodstream within 1 to 2 minutes. The issue with that is that it is increasing the androgenic hormones at the same time. So if you're really young, or if you already have high androgens and high testosterone, then using the tincture as a dopamine increasing strategy is probably not a very good idea. I do know a fair few younger people in their 20s and 30s that have been using the tincture, you know, at low to moderate doses and have been getting really great results from it. I know a number of women that have been using the tincture with very great results as well, but generally speaking, they're keeping the dose quite low in order to get the benefits from it. So if you want to use the tincture as a dopamine increasing strategy, you need to be taking, you know, quite high on the scale of dosage. So if you really don't want to be increasing androgens, then, you know, using the tincture as a strategy for this is probably not at all the choice that you should make. So the powder is still a very, very good source for increasing dopamine. It's very effective at doing that, but the only difference is really that there's many more links in the chain from it getting from the powder into dopamine in the brain. So, you know, it has to go through the whole digestive process. So it's just going to take a lot longer, and perhaps the end result won't be quite as pronounced as it would be with the tincture. But then with the powder, there's really no limit to dosage, so you can take as much as you like and you can take it as often as you like. So yeah, pine pollen, an absolutely amazing herb. It offers so many different healing, medicinal, tonic, nutritive properties to us, and so many of these are really not being explored. So I really wanted to just have a look at this one topic, one of many, one of the amazing benefits of pine pollen. And this is something that's actually very relevant to very many people at the moment, because, you know, high stress and low dopamine levels are actually quite pandemic amongst most people. So hopefully this has been a useful video. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you soon.